allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have Pastor Jim Bridges from First Baptist Church to give the invocation.
Thank you, pray. Lord, we bow our heads to acknowledge that you are God, and we give you thanks for this lovely community where we are privileged to be a part of. We thank you, Lord, for these elected servants that are meeting tonight to conduct the business of this community, and pray that you will grant them wisdom and help them to understand what needs to be done and how to do it. And may all that we do be pleasing to you and good for this place. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, Jerry?
Yes, sir.
Do the swearing in.
Okay. If Betty, you and David and Rick would go up by the seal. Where would you like me so I don't get in the way of you taking the picture? I'll be over this way. Please, if you would. It'll be one of those nights. Okay, is everybody ready? Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear, that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Kansas, and faithfully discharge the duties of council members for the city of Lindsborg, so help you God?
I do.
Thanks very much.
You bet. All right, public input. Taylor, since you raised your hand first, you will be first. If you're the only one.
Galen Bowden, Vice President of Advancement at Bethany College. I've just come to, before you tonight to say thank you. I like doing this. It has become a monthly occurrence, and I get to share again of the Messiah Festival of the Arts that was impacted a little over 3,000 individuals in a 10-day festival that you would help generate for us in that excitement and welcoming to this community and allowing Bethany to do all that it does. As well, being welcoming to our most recent Pearson professor, Jan Arnold, and his wife Sarah. While their time with us is done now, they are venturing to California. They spoke highly of their experiences, and I know that many in the community enjoyed their activities and presence with us as well. And partnering in community walk nights at the stadium, celebrating this weekend the Smoky Valley graduation ceremony that will be held in Crescent Hall, as well as we get ready for the following weekend, May 17th, and would invite all of you to join us for commencement exercises at Bethany College. And finally, as the school year does come to a close, our activities do not. I encourage you to stay with us throughout the summer as we look for our road car, snow car road trip party, which will be at least one stop here in Lindsborg. We always do that. And the football family reunion that is looking to join us during the Midsummer's Festival during June 20th and 21st. And we've already gotten almost 10 RSVPs back just from online. It's been released all of about 48 hours. So again, thank you to who you are in this community and what happens to Bethany, and as we look forward to continuing to partner together.
Thank you. Do you have any others?
David, who's your guest?
This is actually Henry, whom I met on the stairs on the walk up.
I'm a Boy Scout just viewing for Citizenship and Community Rare Badge.
Henry, what's your last name?
Jansen,
Jansen.
with a Z. So,
Thank you, Henry.
thanks.
We have one amendment to the agenda, proclamation for National Nursing Home Week, and I think I'll just let that, we skip that and let the mayor do that since he has more affiliation with nursing homes than I do. I think maybe we can slip that in, Jerry.
when he shows up.
Pardon me?
When he shows up.
That'll work for me. Then, committee appointments, Greg, what do you need to do on this? Because we have several vacancies that Bill has some.
This is the most up-to-date list we have at this time. We recommend that those names put before you for the respective committees be approved. I can read through those if you'd like, or
Motion to adopt. Second.
Any discussion?
Well, there are still several of these people here, so we should acknowledge those who are here.
I think that would be appropriate. And those are?
Well. Okay, we're gonna start pointing. Dwayne,
Aren't you one, Dwayne?
he's on Sister City. Sue Schlegel is on the CDB Advisory Board. Others that are here? No? Those are the only two?
Sorry.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right, have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Then appointed officers. This we need to take action on that as well.
yes,
If you'd like to continue working for
at least for a little while.
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move we approve these officers as listed on the Citizens Committee listing.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Very good. Then we have the next item is the Council President. I would entertain a motion for Council President.
I move that we retain you, Vic.
Second that motion.
Make the motion to nominate Vicki Anderson as council president.
Okay. We got two nominees.
We don't have a second.
We don't have a second.
Oh, we don't have a second. Well, there was a second on me. I didn't hear that part.
It was difficult.
It was difficult, yeah. You want to retain me, huh? Good. Is there a second on Becky? Hearing none. All those in favor? Can I do this for myself?
Sure you can.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, you can. I'm sorry.
For the one nominee.
For the one nominee.
Yeah, technically, you just say the motion on Becky fails for lack of a second,
Okay, I'm sorry.
and then you need to take the vote.
Okay, then we will take a vote for the nominee, me. This is really awkward, you know that? Yeah, they ought to have a long talk with Bill. I guess we need to vote. You want to do a roll call on this, or how are we going to handle this? I wasn't prepared for this.
So
Just do a vote. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, please? None. All right, that carries. Thank you.
You need locked up.
Okay, May meetings, you have a list of May meetings before you. Point out that we have Administration, Finance, and Utilities, Tuesday, May 19th, and then Streets and Parks Committee and Public Safety Committee on May 21st. Do you have any additions to the
No, there are no changes or additions to the list.
Let's see, did I skip over the approval of minutes for the April 6th regular council meeting?
Yes.
April 13th special meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve the April 6th regular council meeting and the April 13th special meeting.
So moved.
The motion, is there a second?
I'll say second.
Okay. Have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Any others, Greg?
No.
And anything for planning and zoning?
No report.
All right, let's move on to administration and finance.
First item is a Prairie Trail Scenic Byway Corridor Management Plan. It was recommended out of committee to bring to full council for consideration. I believe Sue might have some thoughts about
I'd
this.
like to.
All
Thank you
right.
very much. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sue Schweigel. My husband and I run the Seasons of the Fox Bed Breakfast in Lindsborg. And I have recently been selected with quotes as the chairperson for Prairie Trail Scenic Byway. Many of you have been aware of our efforts. We came before you in August of 2013 asking for your resolution to extend the byway, and you said, yes, go ahead. And what you have, if you have a document, and I have no other documents there, thank you. The map is on page 24. It looks like this. It basically shows the purple where we were and the green, which is the extension. So we are now 79.75 miles in length, beginning at Interstate 70 and exit 156, Highway 156, north of Ellsworth, down to Ellsworth, across, down to Canopolis, and across Highway 4 to Lindsborg, and then on Roxbury Road to Canton. And I would like to thank a couple of people. Dr. Fredrickson is here tonight. The roster for our people is on page 49 that tells you who is on Prairie Trail Byway of each of the communities representing. And as you look through the book, the Corridor Management Plan, you will find at the back that there are amenities and work done by the people of Lindsborg, and I'd like to thank Holly Lofton for her work in getting us along with that, because we have had a great deal of energy. When I went before the State Byway Committee in November, I told them that there have been over 200 hours of individual time spent creating this particular document. And it was approved by the Secretary of Transportation. I don't know if you have this particular document. If you don't, I'll be happy to share it, which basically blesses us and makes us now legitimate with the extension. So we are a byway now extended. We are the first of the byways to rewrite corridor management plans. And if you've been around the corridor management plans at any point in time up until now, you know that they have been rather sketchy in the information provided. This is now, as you look at it, a complete document. And so the other byways, of which there are 10 others, we make 11, and a new one is being planned from Goodwin north to the Nebraska border. But at this point, the other byways will be asked to undergo this same arduous task. So we are the first one to do it. And I stand before you today asking for your approval and reception of the byway information into your records.
All right, I make a motion to approve from this council the Prairie Trail Scenic Byway Corridor Management Plan.
Second.
Any discussion?
My discussion would be, I read all of this, I think it's a good document. I enjoyed reading it, and I thought it was plain and interesting, so it's good.
And hats off to what has been a long journey.
It has been, and that fortunately, just to interrupt you for a moment, fortunately, we now have 2 county commissioners on the byway board, which we have not had before. So, and I was just at Ellsworth County Commissioners this morning. So they have blessed us. We're awaiting McPherson, because I wanted to have all the cities in McPherson County adopting it before we went to the county. So thank you for your comment.
I've been associated with this group for, well, since its inception. I have not been a regular attendee for quite some time, but in talking to travel and tourism folks in Topeka, I talk to them frequently and have brought this up, I have heard nothing but good things about the group and about how this whole thing has processed. So I echo, job well done and a lot of annual hours.
It's been a rebirth, and I'm in hopes that we will go forward from this point.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Motion passes. Thank you.
The next item is the wage and salary study. Is there someone here to say?
We have Steve Cohen with Labor Management Advisory Group here this evening. And Labor Management Advisory Group, and in particular, Steve, conducted the study on behalf of the city of Lindsborg, and he is present this evening, present to present. So with that, go.
Ladies and gentlemen, nice to be in your beautiful city, and I don't say that lightly. It is a beautiful little town, and I drove down from Kansas City to be with you tonight and share with you the plan that I developed for the city. In a lot of ways that I can talk about this, and I don't want to go into more detail than you're interested in, and I also don't want to leave questions unanswered. So maybe as an introduction, I might say that a wage and salary plan is kind of one of the most fundamental things a city or a county can do, can have done. My company is the Labor Management Advisory Group. I've been in business since 1988 and have done probably 50 to 75 of these studies for cities and counties in Kansas and Missouri. I'm based in Kansas City, and I have a small firm, 4 other people besides myself, and we do provide HR and management and organizational design services for for-profit, for not-for-profit, for municipal organizations. And so that would include things like policy and procedure manuals, job descriptions, performance appraisal programs, and then wage and salary. And we also do quite a bit of training in management and sexual harassment prevention. Those are some of the main things that we do. The wage and salary plan is a critical piece of infrastructure, HR infrastructure, that provide guidance and predictability and stability for your employees, as well as, in some ways, for your administrator, and in some ways for you all as elected officials. The idea is that employees should know, given certain assumptions like that the city can afford to provide raises, what those raises might be. And so that they can see down the road what their raises might be, given, number one, the city has the money, and two, their performance has been satisfactory to warrant a raise. And so if they can see that with some predictability, then they can make the decisions about, can they afford to buy that new truck or car or house or appliance or whatever. So that's essentially what the wage and salary plan does, is give stability for the employees and predictability. And also for you, it takes the burden away from you to have to decide, or even Mr. Mars, what the raise should be. And courts, having this plan in front of you takes some of the worst elements of associated with wage and salary away from you. So the plan that I did for you all is kind of like a Swiss Army knife, if you will. That it's a kind of a tool that will do many, many things, as opposed to a hammer, which really just does two things, or a screwdriver or something like that. And so this plan answers questions about what is the appropriate range for a particular job title, and then what is the appropriate amount that should be provided or projected for a reasonable rate, wage increase. What do we do when we've got people that have been long-term employees, and you have many of them, when their salary, because they've been given raises over the years, what do we do when their compensation exceeds what the market is? And without a wage and salary plan, what do we pay people when they just first come out of school? Or what do we pay people when they have X number of years experience? What do we do in the case of when they're ceiling or frozen at the top of the range, and to try to mitigate the issues of being disgruntled and frozen in their compensation? So this plan answers all of those questions. And I'll be glad to try and explain why, and that's the reason why I came down, so that Mr. DeMars would call him to explain all the rationale behind it. And I have an agreement with him and the city that anytime he has a concern relative to the pay plan, that he pick up the phone and call me and say, "Hey, Steve, we've got this situation, what do we do about it?" And so I'm available to you indirectly and to him specifically to answer any questions as they happen to come up, if we haven't thought about it already and provided things. So what I did just basically is identify the number of cities that were comparable, competitive, and similar size and like-mindedness, and did a survey. This was not an internet or generic information-based survey. I went directly to the cities and asked them for their current either compensation for an incumbent or for the range for the particular titles. So I started with a list that Mr. DeMars provided me. These are all the titles that the city of Lindsborg uses, and I put them on a survey instrument along with actually a list of benefits that are provided, and then ship them to the cities that were willing to cooperate with me. And we then got back data on what these comparable cities pay for each of the titles that you all use. And then I was able to organize those titles based upon that current salary data into job families, and had come up with 12 different levels. And I believe the previous system that you were using only had 4 levels. So this gives a little bit more flexibility. And so I developed a range using the current salary data from the survey, and now we have a range established for all 12 levels and all, I believe you had something like 20-some titles. And so that became the Lindsborg, what I would describe as a comparable work table, or it's really your pay plan. And then I developed from that what I call spread or distribution tables so that the range for all 12 of the levels is divided into 20 steps. And each step represents between 2.25% and 2.5%. And so you can see that an orderly transportation of someone through the range. So if they, let's say, are at step 4, and at their step 4, then obviously they go to step 5, and then step 6, all the way up to step 20. And so you might ask, well, what happens if someone is at step 20, then they're seated? And that means they're frozen. We don't roll. If they're beyond step 20, which didn't have anybody at that level, then we would freeze them. And then as they get to step 20, then they're frozen. And I made a recommendation that, as an example, every other year we extend the range, and by eliminating step 1, and that makes step 2, step 1, and then all of a sudden you've got 20 becomes 19, and then so with maintaining the integrity of that spread, it goes like this. So we go up and then over. So now we have a new 20-step range with the ceiling extended by 2.25% to 2.5%, and then every other year it just moves. So we've got an answer to that question of what do we do with the ceiling. And it also answers the question if you've got a person that, for example, has been in the position for 30 years and the market is between, let's say, 18 and 28,000, but they're being paid 33,000. With this system, you have legal justification for freezing them. Without having a system in place, they cannot be frozen. They just keep on progressing as cost of living or raises continue. So I developed this spread, which I think is probably in front of you. If you have questions, please ask, for each of the 12 steps. And then I developed a cost to implement table. So you can see, or maybe aware that you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 employees that were sufficiently underpaid in the sense that they were paid below the entry for what the range should be. Everyone else was paid within the range. So what that should tell you is that you've actually done a very good job establishing compensation. No one was over the range or ceiling, and 7 people were actually paid below the range, and so that's pretty respectable. And so I provided a cost to move them from below the entry to the first step on the range. And then everybody else was between steps. They might have been between step 12 and step 13 or step 5 to 6. And then I calculated the exact cost to put them on the survey, on the pay plan. And then I also provided a column to provide for implementation to the next step. And so that's $37,815. And that is your budget for pay increases for next year, presuming that everybody gets 1 step increase. So this pay plan is what I would describe as a fairly simple pay plan. I've been doing this, as I said, for many, many, many years. And there are, I think, bells and whistles in many of the compensation plans that firms or people that are just explicitly or expertly compensation consultants, and they use things like comp ratios. And, I mean, I think it's kind of magical. And I have believed that the simpler the better is always the best answer. And so I want your staff to be able to completely understand what has been set for them. I want you to be able to understand it, but I want the most basic or elementary person that works for you to believe that there was a fair system set up and an understandable system set up, and therefore they will be comfortable and satisfied that the city has done everything that they can to build a compensation program for them that they can literally live with. This plan is set up so that it should last or should be competent for literally 10, 12, 15 years. The city that has the record in my company is way over the Blue Hill of Missouri. It's Jackson, Missouri. And they've used the same pay plan for 19 years now. And about every third year, they bring me back to do a wage study to make sure that nothing is kind of falling out of kilter. And so we make, it's like a good car or a good truck. If you maintain it, do your tune-ups, it should last and last and last and last. This pay plan is built that way. And so I'm going to estimate that you'll be able to use this 10, 12, 15 years to bring me back, or have someone do wage survey work for you about every 2 to 4 years, usually the average is 3. I get called back in, then this thing will be serviceable and usable for a long, long time. So that's kind of an introduction, and I'll be glad to try and answer any questions that you might have. My recommendation is that you accept it, that you install it. I do not recommend that you cherry pick and say, well, let's do this but not that. It's from the point of view of your consultant and from a really a liability minimizing perspective, I hope that you'll just accept it as it is. And Mr. DeMars and I have gone through it pretty carefully, and he can speak for himself about how he feels about it. But I would hope, and I would ask city councils and county commissions over the years to do that. Just if you like it, if you can accept it, then accept it and let it be administered by your city administrator. And if you aren't comfortable with it, then reject it out of hand. But I have not really allowed Mr. DeMars to manipulate the process or to, the idea of doing the survey and having it built by an outside person is so that the employees couldn't say, well, you manipulated the process by, only surveying the poorest of the poor cities, and so you skewed the numbers down. And sometimes city council members say, well, you used the richest of the rich and you skewed the numbers up. And so basically, he and I worked together, but I was the one that identified cities to be used, and the data then is free of bias, and again, passes the smell test with employees as well as with yourself.
Quick question, what is, for my own understanding, what is a brief description of level as the employees are ranked? Is it a 1 through 12?
Yes. Yes. Well,
it's easy to figure out that grade is number 1.
Right. Yes. I could have just as easily put, the city administrator at level 12, but this is generally the way I set this up. There was a pretty big gap in the data between city administrator compensation and finance director compensation, as you could see, 57,000 to 67,000. And so I put a step in between so that there is some flexibility should that position, maybe there's an assistant city administrator someday. But I basically, as I collected the data, I did on the computer a simple sort. And so I asked the computer to sort all the titles and the entries from high to low. And then I coupled them, or I created the families, literally based upon the raw data.
So it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with whether they're a department manager or not? Okay, thank you.
Okay, and when you say high to low what?
Well, from the highest, what I did was I surveyed these cities, and then I took the entries for all the cities, for example, for the city administrator title. And so some of them were as high as 107 or 8,000, and some were as low as 70,000. And
So you went by a title as opposed to a job description?
well, no, yes and no. I created the titles, and many of the cities use similar titles. For example, a police officer is a police officer, whether they're here or there. A sergeant may be different in the sense that some cities might use a sergeant versus other cities might use a lieutenant. And so I spoke with Mr. DeMars about, the duties of the folks here in Lindsborg. And then as I received permission to float the survey to the other cities, usually it was a payroll clerk or a city clerk that was cooperating with me. I went through with them questions that they had about, well, what do you mean when you say this title? So that's what the beauty of the customized survey is. I could literally talk to the person who was compiling the data, and I was able to clarify with that person what they were meaning.
How many cities did you contact? Is it here?
No, it's not here. It's not in that data. I think I had 9.
And the population ranges were similar
to your city.
Okay.
I think we looked anywhere from the full list of starting out was 2,500 to about 6,000.
And then when I got the data back, if I got, like, for example, a title was paid at a significantly different rate than the others, I would call and say, help me understand this. And so sometimes I would discover that, for example, a city clerk in some instances is also a finance clerk, and in other instances is not. And so I was able to ascertain a pretty clear picture of what your job descriptions are for these titles and what my comparable cities' job descriptions are.
So at this point, we are being asked to do what?
Adopt a pay policy.
Well, I accept the program. Would like to also have it sent to committee.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion just to send this back to committee for further discussion and review.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Are you still not?
I'm just giving that time.
And why is that, Rick?
Why is what?
Why are you
Sending it back.
sending it back?
For further discussion and more review by the committee, and having the other committees have a chance to look at it and review it a little bit more.
Okay. Should we ask questions while the gentleman's here, or should we wait until later?
Well, I would ask what questions you have now.
There isn't any provision here, though, for merit rating.
There could be. The way merit works, if you have a system for merit, in other words, a performance appraisal tool, and then so that if someone gets what I would call a meritorious review, then they could get one step. If the city administrator and the department head felt like someone within the group was a superstar and was absolutely more than meritorious, then they could recommend 2 steps. And if someone was just an average performer, then they might get no steps, or if they were in probationary, or if they were in trouble in some ways, they would get no steps. So the propelling through the steps, through the range, in this way is set up to either be merit, or you could use these steps for cost of living. There's another way to do cost of living, and I'm sure that Rick was doing.
I saw that in there.
And see what that's, in fact, I asked Rick if he would send it, not that I have any issues with the study itself, is so that we could discuss how we want to do the merit portion of it, so we could have everybody in agreement on that. I mean, we do have an appraisal piece right now, an evaluation that we conduct on everybody, and how do we want to use that in conjunction with this, is what I'd like to discuss by sending it back to committee. Also a discussion on cost of living. I mean, historically, we've done a cost of living, or we looked at a cost of living, and also the opportunity for a merit increase. Be able to discuss that with the full committee, or with committees, and bring it back to council on how we would actually implement those in conjunction with the survey and the plan itself.
So Rick, you're wanting to go send it back to the 2 days?
All committees.
Huh?
You want to go to all committees?
To all committees,
Well,
yeah.
but Tuesdays, there's 2 committees now already have discussed it together. I mean, it doesn't matter, fine.
Yeah, I mean, that way to just give each all the committees an opportunity to talk to Greg about it as well, and discuss it in committees, and then bring it before the full council again next month.
Other questions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure to work with Mr. Mars and to be a resource of the city. I will certainly be available to you in the future. Any questions, you can always direct them through your city administrator to me. And again, it's been my pleasure. This is probably maybe the 25th city or county on the Kansas side, and because I work for so many of the smaller cities, I already had a relationship with them. Some of the data was already mine. Salary plan, for example, just finished the program with Mountain Ridge, and in fact, that may be where Mr. Morris found me through a recommendation from the city administrator there. So, at any rate, you can I would hope that you would be very confident that you've got a salary survey and a pay plan that matches what the market is, and that you'll be satisfied. One of the worst things that can happen is that you pay too little and then you become a trading ground for other places to steal your employees. And the other is that you pay too much and then you're accused of being loose and fast with taxpayers' money. In this instance, you can be sure that you are paying within the range of what is comparable, and that should make everybody in this room, as well as outside the room, confident in their city administration and their city leadership. Thanks.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate all the
Pleasure. Pleasure to hear.
Next item is,
If I may interrupt, we probably need to swear the mayor.
Just to take it down.
Hold, please. Let me come in. If you would raise your right hand, sir. Oh. Ready? Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Kansas, and faithfully discharge the duties of the mayor for the city of Lindsborg, for some help with that?
I do.
You bet. Carry on.
Next item is the sidewalk cafe licensing. I'm not sure where this is.
Gary, you want to address this, Greg?
Gary, go ahead.
Sure.
We have a request, formal request, to pursue sidewalk licensing. I don't know if anybody on the board has a question about what that is. The state of Kansas allows sale of liquor and food on the sidewalk right away if sidewalk licensing has been established through ordinance. We have a pretty good example. I've talked to in the city of Salina. I've talked to the Assistant Attorney General in Topeka in charge of the program. It's fairly straightforward. Probably a 12, 13-page ordinance will establish it in this work. And then the requestor, Farley's Bar and Grill, will be able to apply for a license. I think the reason it's on the agenda tonight is just to get kind of a once and for sure sign that you want to proceed with this process. It is going to take some time to put together. I perceive that we have 3 council members that were at the committee that are in favor, but that leaves 5 council members with, I have a question of whether you are for or against it. If we had 5 strongly against it, then I would say let's not even bother. So it's on the agenda just to see
what
some of the others.
questions or concerns.
Yeah.
I know what kind of questions or concerns that you may have.
Or any questions.
Because part of the ordinance provides the opportunity to put not only what has to be put in there from a state requirement standpoint, but there can also be some local controls put in place to address concerns that you as city council may have. And so that was the opportunity, or this is an opportunity to maybe bring some of those forward and get that input.
I'd say I'm in favor of anything that creates that visitor-friendly, visitor-welcoming atmosphere. A couple questions off the top of my head is, for one, how does it change, for instance, the way, I have to presume it doesn't change the way the Stuga does business because it's not utilizing the sidewalk. It's a beer garden, has an enclosed fence, so they've got that all covered.
That is correct. That's public
But if
property.
they wanted
Or private property.
but if they would want to move out onto the sidewalk, there would be a new ordinance that would change the way they do business.
Well, yes, there would need to be.
Okay. And then if you have a place, and I guess the 2 places that come to mind right away are the Swedish Country Inn and the Old Grind, where there is seating outside an establishment where non-alcoholic beverages and food is. Doesn't change anything for them because it's the alcohol that changes the formula. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, well,
It's kind of
well, I mean, there are certain requirements. I mean, we're in the state of Kansas where alcohol
no,
laws.
that's just what she said was alcohol.
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part. I mean.
Well, I don't know what your food license says.
Okay.
I have no idea what
Somebody
food
wants
license.
to carry their breakfast buffet plate from the Swedish Country Inn out to a patio table, there's not a problem
No,
with that.
no.
Same thing with bringing a sandwich from the Old Bright. It's the alcohol that changes it, so.
But with this ordinance, you could erect fencing or something, temporary fencing and things like that, awnings and so on, correct?
You have to.
Yeah, because you're gonna have to for the alcohol portion, but if somebody wanted to have that just because, they could also.
A
If
fence?
they would have a private area out there for customers, or
On the
section
sidewalk.
or something. Yeah, I mean, like you see in downtown Kansas City areas and stuff. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily just be for alcohol, period. You could use it for other stuff if somebody was inclined to.
Like what?
like the restaurants that just serve general food and stuff out on the sidewalk, but they still fence it off so that the general public isn't walking through there.
That's true. The license is for the service of food and alcohol. And the clarification there would say the Swedish Country Inn taking a breakfast. By rights, Becky can't serve
outside.
But she could, if we had licensing, she could fence off and.
But people can, I can't go and take your order outside. But if people are in the inn and they say, I'm going outside with my plate, they can do that. I just can't go out there and say, what would you like?
But for fencing and so on, there's still other requirements to say they can't block the sidewalk totally, aren't there? Or,
well, that's part of what would have to be included into this
well,
license.
this is for with alcohol, and I understand, but even any entity down.
Well, this isn't. I mean, go back to what Gary said. This is to serve food. Probably a better way to put it: serve food and or alcohol on the sidewalk.
But they do not have a drawing plan, X number of feet coming out from the building and this.
No,
and that.
these are parameters that would be set within this, and they would have to comply with those.
So the order here is we first have to adopt this ordinance, and then they have to draw their plan in compliance with the ordinance.
Correct.
Well, couldn't we have some kind of design review or something involved with this as well?
That's part of Salinas plan, and we would recommend that we have a design review process to really have control over the ultimate layout of the fenced-in area, because it's going to differ based on the parcel. I mean, every storefront has a different situation, so there's no way that we can write legislation that will cover all those little quirks. So you have a review board that will look at a specific instance, but we'll probably establish 200 square feet as a maximum, no more than 200 square feet.
Well, I would say if we have a good review process and people want it, doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Gary, is there an ADA or anybody that says the sidewalk space has to be this? You know, when we looked at it before and the curtain ordinance, you know, it down by the buildings, at that point we had somebody with a cane, you know, coming along and this and that and whatever. Are there, I like the idea of being out there, but I don't like the idea of taking it up and leaving a 4 foot by the edge, you know, of the
I don't know the answer to that, but my guess is that it wouldn't be more than 48 inches, maybe 60 inches.
From the building?
From clear...
Oh, clear space.
I can tell you a standard ADA requirement is either a 10-foot sidewalk on one side of the street or a 5-foot sidewalk on both sides of the street. That is ADA compliance.
Okay. Because didn't I understand Salina, they were talking about taking away some parking and going to, you know, get some more space so they could bring it out on the sidewalk more and make space available and that kind of thing. It's not what we're looking at, correct?
No, I'm not aware of that stuff in Salina, no.
Really? I thought I had that with the commissioner, that's what they were.
Possible. As far as I know.
Instead of 4 lanes, they're going to go to 3 and try and, you know, narrow it down and bring the curve out maybe 4 feet or whatever it is. And
I'm unaware of any efforts here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've got to go back to the question with, since it's regulating food and or alcohol, does that mean if you wanted to take strictly food service out onto the sidewalk, where someone came and took your order and then served your order, that it requires fencing?
I don't think it requires that, does it?
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
The difference is you're allowing a public asset to be used for private enterprise.
Okay.
And that's why the fencing is to differentiate that, and 2 is to give them a designated license to use that for a set period of time for their private enterprise.
So then theoretically, I guess you could, if you owned a storefront, you could request a fence in because you don't have the seating capacity inside that you want outside, but it does mean that whatever retail business it is you're taking to utilize public sidewalk or city public sidewalk, it has to be fenced in.
Well, under this particular what we're talking about, I mean, your example doesn't fall into that, but I mean, it depends on how far you wanted to take it. I mean, that's why we're having the
I
discussion.
think that's,
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's food service outside strictly, I don't see why you'd have to have that much.
liability.
Well, let me put it to you this way. If I'm going to serve food but not alcohol on the public sidewalk, and I don't have it fenced off, then I have no authority to remove anybody from that seating on the public sidewalk because I do not have a license for the use of that public asset for private purposes. Therefore, any seating I put on that sidewalk is a public asset and can be used as such. This is why, like in front of the Swedish Country Inn, and why in front of the Old Grind, that seating, you do not have to be a patron of that facility to sit there, or like in front of the Small World Gallery, things like that. That is for public use. But if you want to limit it to a private use, then they need to get a license to do that. And this is one way to handle the food and the alcohol served. And well, for the alcohol, you don't have a choice because of the requirements of the state, but it's a way to also handle it from the food side.
I think if you look at it from this aspect, is let's say they set seating outside right now in front of Belisco's, and their intent was to have serve food out there. If a bunch of people came along and sat down, took up that space, I mean, then they have no right to that without fencing that area off. Mm-hmm. So once that's fenced off, that really becomes, by that statute, that becomes part of their seating area.
That's correct.
That makes sense.
Gary, I've read this a lot, I don't know if this is in there or not, about trash and spillage and all this kind of stuff. How is that monitored? I mean, if the space is given over to Farley's and they want to use that, is it up to them to clean it up and don't have trash blowing all over and that kind of stuff? And if there are problems, what happens?
I understand your question, and I don't believe it's in this line code at all. We perhaps should address that issue because that could potentially be a problem. If you have a license to use public property, does the responsibility to keep it clean go with it, and what is the process to police and monitor that? I don't know that I have an answer for that, but I don't think the language clearly spells it out. That it would become a civil issue.
This could be an issue that we need to address in our ordinance.
Yeah, if you're specific, then it's clear what you do if you run into a situation.
And the one thing I have to, I mean, at least the way this language is written is one, it's only a license for a year at a time, and it's a revocable license, so it can be revoked for violation.
Can it be revoked for things other than violation with a certain amount of notice, or is it a year to year? Yeah, let's just, I don't believe this will happen. It becomes a wild party zone, and it's loud, and it's trashy. I mean, people throwing pizza boxes or whatever, and smashing wine glasses, and it just becomes a public nuisance. They get 30 days notice to shut it down, to clean it up. I mean, what are those processes addressed?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be the process of forfeiting the license or having the license revoked. I can't tell you what the days were, and I think it was.
That's fine.
What about Jim Turner wants to have an outside gallery? And I heard turning over public space to, we're letting the food vendors do it, people in that business. What's keeping everybody else from up and down? Just thinking, I mean, this is way out there, but I'm just thinking, has are we discriminating against the galleries or the tire store or somebody else?
A retail establishment would have to approach the council and ask for licensing for retail sale of goods. And that would be something that certainly could be licensed down the road, but it isn't part of this.
Yeah, the short answer is yes, you would be discriminating them, but there's nothing that prevents that type of discrimination. And two, it wouldn't be allowed in the current ordinance.
Right. Except on temporary by permanent basis.
I guess what I'm hearing and what I think I'm hearing in the room is everybody thinks it's a good idea. We'd like to see something more finalized, whatever, for Lindsborg, based on all these things. And if you have questions or additional conversation, it would be very great.
So if this goes back to committee, you get all the work done, and the ordinance is presented in the meeting in June. And how long in publications and all of that does that take for that to be enacted?
Jerry, it would just be publication of the following.
As soon as, yeah.
And then it would become law.
The following what?
Unless you want to designate it as a particular start date.
Yeah, that's what we want to do.
If the real question is the bottom question is what's the earliest possible date?
I mean, that's what I think everybody would like to know.
Is it possible that this is, we could give them a green flag by July 1?
It's possible.
Yeah, sure. If adopted June 1st, should be in the paper on the 11th of June, correct?
So that would be the soonest.
And it's just a one publication.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
So the earliest is sometime later, early
Well,
July.
they would be able to apply on the 11th. And the process is they just resubmit their application for a license to sell alcohol with a copy of our adopted ordinance. And that could probably be done in a few days.
Depends on how fast the state moves.
Right. But there is no period of protest or a waiting period to, no, it becomes law when it's public. If people have a problem with it, they need to be involved in the council meeting when it's presented. I don't know if that's where you're going with it.
Well, I think they
Fairly
just
straightforward.
want some idea. I mean, they've got a lot of stuff to order and do. And so.
Well, our conversations with Bill and Kathy
Where the June one would be very probably
soon.
sooner than they truly be ready for.
Yeah.
But it's not June 1, it's probably July 1.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next item is Central Conference Center tables and chairs. Request to buy 60 additional chairs, 6 round tables. The amount requested is $3695.59. That is a motion to approve this.
Second?
Been moved and seconded, further discussion?
Can they put them outside?
No. Any more offense?
When I skipped over, it said something about these were not needed or required or something. I swear that was on
They're discontinued.
here. Maybe that's what it was. They were discontinued. So this is our last opportunity to buy matching ones.
No, the vendor that we got from last time has discontinued carrying this style. Correct?
Yeah.
They're discontinued, period, and I
The
think I'm
model
buying
altogether.
altogether.
Okay.
I'm buying current supply of other things.
So we will be able to get stuff later from different vendors to replace things that are broken and damaged and so on.
Not at this time.
Not of the chairs, no. I think what you're saying, this chair has been discontinued across the board. Other additional questions? Roll call, please.
Betty?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Emil?
Yes.
Becky?
Motion carried. Any additional others?
I'd like to bring something up. We had discussions previously about kind of doing away with committee meetings, with separate committee meetings, and having 2 council meetings. And I'm kind of discussed this with a few people, but, and I was one of the ones that was really opposed to doing away with committees and the early morning committee meetings. And I think tonight has been a couple of good examples on some things that we've discussed here that maybe some things could have moved forward a little bit better if everybody would have received the same, or I should say same information, but had an opportunity to discuss on some of these items. So I guess I'd like to throw out again, and I know I'm changing my mind, but to go to 2 council meetings per month in lieu of the committee meetings. And I don't know if we want to have a discussion now or take this back to committee that I just said I didn't want to do.
Take that back to committee and have a discussion here about.
Pardon me?
That's going to be by ordinance. And we've got, our ordinance says that we've got to have one committee, or one council meeting a month. If we're going to change that, that's going to have to, is that correct?
Yeah, if you go to 2 council meetings, it would be a change, would require an ordinance.
Okay, then I guess I'm just requesting that we put this on the agenda for the committees. Okay. For this month, please.
It takes no action here, does it?
No.
Okay. Becky, any others?
Nope.
Before we go to utilities, I do have a proclamation that I would like to do. The proclamation is National Nursing Home Week. Whereas our community is stronger because we honor and respect our elders and citizens of any age with physical or intellectual disabilities who reside in a skilled nursing or long-term care in Lindsborg, Kansas. And whereas these citizens have made important contributions to the success and growth of our community, and whereas skilled nursing centers are holding events in observation of National Nursing Home Week, May 10th to the 16th, using this year's theme of Bring On the Fiesta, and guided by the American Healthcare Association. And whereas I urge all citizens to visit a loved one, friend, or neighbor being cared for in any setting and offer a kind word and a personal touch to show your continuing support. And whereas my administration is committed to the quality of healthcare and continuously improving quality of life, we take this moment to embrace the spirit of Bring On the Fiesta and wish all residents, patients, caregivers, and other staff and visitors to skilled nursing centers a week-long festival of family, life, and love. And therefore, I, Bill Taylor, as Mayor of Lindsborg, Kansas, do declare the week of May 10th to the 16th, 2015 as National Nursing Home Week, and adopt the theme of Bring On the Fiesta as our way of celebrating our vigor and good times, and one way to honor all citizens who reside in a skilled nursing and post-acute care center. Do I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this line proclamation?
That is fiesta, not siesta. Is that right?
Fiesta. Was that third? Did I not say fiesta?
Yes. I knew what she's doing.
Did I say fiesta? Now you're embarrassing me now. My way.
Can you, as the mayor of Lindsborg, really proclaim a national siesta festival for next week?
I can proclaim this is a great deal, having need in the business. I appreciate all that the members do and all of our skilled communities and those that reside and help others in those areas. So thank you all. Let's have a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None of those should be opposed then. Thank you. Thank you. Bring on the fiesta. Utilities, please.
Utilities Committee, we first of all, we need to have a alternate voting delegate to the Kansas Municipal Utilities. And we have already chosen Mr. Dumars as our principal voting delegate, and the committee nominated Blaine Hebel as the alternate voting delegate for KMU, and I am moving that the entire council vote on this matter as well.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Thank you, Blaine.
Thank you, Blaine, for doing this. So the other thing here of really pretty vital importance is the looking at the West Star Pole Attachment Agreement. And as we said in committee meeting, Greg spends a good deal of his time working on problems and other agreements with West Star. I'm not going to try to explain this much, except that the committee talked about all of it and voted to move it to full council for consideration.
I would recommend that it go back to committee because the requested changes that we have asked for in the full attachment agreement, we haven't gotten a response from West Star yet. Still have not. Tried to follow up again today, and I have not. From the requested changes, I have not heard anything. Not even an acknowledgement of receipt. So,
we need to have a motion to move it back to committee, or can we just no action?
I'll just direct it back to committee.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
I have no other.
And then in light of the DSNO letter that we got today, is that in the impact on this? It was in our mailbox.
Greg, did you not get?
I have no idea what you're.
I saw it in the email. I have it pulled up right now, because I was going to ask that.
You know what?
Yeah.
I didn't get anything like that.
I'll forward it to Greg.
And the rest of us.
Bill,
Yeah, I know, I understand that.
Tim Power is the
Yeah.
man's name.
No.
Sent at 9:51 this morning.
No, I did not.
Okay.
Says it went to.
it went to all council and myself.
No, Greg.
Anyway, it's all
Well, I
about,
didn't get on the notice.
it's all about power and whatever, so.
Okay.
Well, I don't care what it
Just you or anybody else.
is. Is it an email?
Yeah, it is.
Will you send me one?
Your, yes, I will. All right, streets and parks.
The first item, that looks like maybe the only item, is to discuss projects for asphalt. We have two motions. First motion is to recommend approval of bid from Pipeline Sand for chip and seal in the amount of $73,225.
That's a motion.
That is
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion on this bid for chip sealing? Hearing none. Just roll call, please.
Becky? Yes. Eno?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Rick?
yes.
Blaine?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Then the second motion is to recommend approval of bid from Apex Shears for asphalt work in the amount of $107,050. That is a motion.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? I'll start the discussion. Garfield Street, 200 and 300. Any concerns?
Tim Dunn isn't here, is he?
No. This was an item of discussion during committee. 200-300 block of East Garfield is not considered an improved street. Under current city policies, we do not maintain an improved, well, let me rephrase that. We do not do this type of maintenance on unimproved streets. The reason being is because when streets first installed, whether they were first made with asphalt or concrete, the adjoining or benefiting property owners pay the initial cost of the street, and then the city assumes all maintenance liability from that point forward. This would set a precedence on improving a street that has not been paid for by the benefiting adjoining owners. The discussion in the committee, and I will paraphrase horribly, was this, or the discussion was how much traffic does this particular 200 and 300 block of East Garfield serve beyond the neighboring property owners. And that's why it was on the list for possible improvement.
There was one other reason listed.
Yes.
We were one of the majority property owners on that street as well.
Yes.
The city of Lindsborg is.
That is correct.
And so the question is, why should we be making an exception for this?
Correct.
And the pros of why we shouldn't make an exception are what?
The pros would be, it is, while we don't have any traffic studies, it is highly believed it's a main traffic way for the northwest side of town to either access Bethany College or to make their way out of town to get access out of the community if they're traveling out of town to a job or whatever. It's probably and interrupt me if I'm getting that part of the discussion wrong for those who are part of that discussion. Is probably the main reasons to argue for that it's used more than just a residential street.
It is, it's highly used. Are we talking about anything else here or just this one?
I mean, you know,
But it's a street that we already maintenance.
Yeah.
That would be the difference there.
The con is what I already explained. It goes against our existing policy, so we'd be setting a precedent that could potentially open us up. Well, you did it for them, why aren't you doing it for us?
Are we talking about any other problems here? I mean, I think there's a big problem on North 2nd Street, beyond where I live, on what would be the 800 block, and really it's a very long block, about halfway through. It's already curbed and guttered. It has asphalt down on it, and that street is awful. It's really awful.
It's actually in the 800 block of North Second is in there for
Chip seal?
Where is that?
Chip seal.
Yeah, it is.
800 block is about halfway down under chip seal.
Right. Okay, chip seal. Explain to me what chip seal is, really.
Chip seal is, I mean, it is just basically really what you're talking about. It's a chip or an aggregate that's chip size. They get spread onto the street. Don't ask me the thickness because. I don't care about that. And then an oil coating is put over top that binds the chips together. Yes.
Well, that's good. I missed that was there, but it really is bad. Those people down there, Bill, that Beckman and so on, they talked to me, and I know they talked to Emo, and then I drove down there and I thought, wow, this is awful. So that's good. If this is, they'll be glad to know.
so explain to me what, if we go counter to what has been accepted protocol on streets, what kind of ramifications does this mean to the adjoining property owners? What kind of dollars are we talking about?
I mean, to improve the street
Yeah.
Since we require concrete under our current policies, let's see, we reconstructed how many blocks of I'm sorry, I'm thinking out loud. McPherson Street, we went from basically Main to Cole Street. It's probably about 6 blocks. And the cost of that project, Larry,
Well, our share was $300,000 and some thousand that we got back.
And
We
so,
got a point three
so it was about $1.2 million project, because we
for
had to
6
pay.
lots. Right?
Yes, and that was without curb and gutter.
And so this would be 2
400,000.
lots.
It would probably
400 grand?
be at least,
And there's
yes.
how many houses on it?
Well, you don't go by houses, you go by properties.
Yeah.
Go by, is it by running feet
There's,
in the street?
well, there's different ways of assessing, but typically you go by the frontage of the benefiting street. So there are 1, 2, we own 2 properties, 4, 6, 8 property owners. So
8 property owners to divide around.
let's say 400 to
$50,000
$500,000.
property then.
But over
That
10
can
years.
be, that can be assessed over 10 years. So.
Or longer if you chose to.
Okay.
But that was including the one PM.
Yes.
So technically, we'd have to pay our portion of that too anyways.
Yeah.
Which would be 80,000. If we have 2 or 3.
2.
Yeah. Well, they don't have stuff like that.
You know, and really that's not a fair assessment because we don't just divide it, we divide it by linear feet of frontage is how we've typically applied that. Correct, Larry?
Yes.
And go back again, why are we having this discussion? Because we're thinking that it is a main traffic way?
Yes,
from
that
west
it
to
carries
east?
much more, it's classified as a residential street under a comprehensive plan, but the belief is from discussion that it's used by more than just the residential. Check to see if we got the weather alerts. Now I lost my train of thought.
The traffic count.
The traffic count would be higher. I mean, and it's anecdotal. We haven't done a traffic study or anything like that.
And the recommendation came from Tim Dunn as a recommended street that we needed to look at doing, not only because of the traffic count, but because of the kind of traffic that was on it. There are a lot of buses that are accessing that because of the athletics, and it is becoming a preferred route out of town because it's easy to access. They're from Bethany Drive.
The other problem too is we already paved, should I say we paved it once? We've already done work to the street.
We put down,
Beyond
I mean, when we mill up streets, you develop asphalt millings. When we redid McPherson Street, we generated asphalt millings, we put it on East and West Union, which works for a while. The problem is when your millings start going out, you end up with a worse street than you had before you put the millings on it.
So the reason we're having this discussion is because it is outside of what our normal policy is.
Adopted policy,
Okay,
yes.
and so you go outside of your adopted policy, and what kind of precedence does that set?
Correct.
Do we have anything else
Union.
out there?
Union.
Okay.
I mean, basically, you'd be looking from Cole to Coronado.
We're gonna have some streets that no one is going to put the building improve other than the city. Like you,
Well, why do you say that?
because who are you gonna assess it to?
Whoever owns the property.
But they're gonna fight it.
Don't they have to?
I mean, that's the problem part of it. Those houses, most of them don't face Garfield, they face First.
It's about property ownership. It's not about what's street.
But when
It's
you're
about who
talking-
owns the property. It's linear feet.
But when you're talking about improving it based on the property owner, that's what matters to the property owner, so they're not gonna see any benefit. Whereas the city.
Well, let me correct you that. If I may interject, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But in your comment there, while the house may face First Street, I know several of those properties have garages and driveways that access Garfield.
And
So they're using and benefiting from that street anyway, so.
And and just to clarify, we're not talking about assessments here with this project.
Correct.
None of this.
What we're saying is,
Budgeted work.
yeah, well, what we're asking is, do you want to go against policy and go ahead and put a 4-inch asphalt overlay onto this street. And
I know that street elicits more comments, to me anyway. Bill, do you think that? I mean, people say all the time, when can we get this street fixed over here that's on Garfield?
But it's not about getting the street fixed, it's about who's in favor.
I understand that. They don't always understand. Yeah. And they have all kinds of complaints, and it's a heavily used street. I'm not saying I'm for it or not really. I'm saying we get a lot of comments about it.
I'm saying that I feel like it would be a fair use of taxpayers' money, the same as if later on we had to go into union and do something to it, if the time was right.
Well, actually, it's proposed, correct? 6 inches of asphalt using the first intersection?
That's just an intersection.
Just the intersection.
Something that's already asphalted. All right, been a lot of good discussion. Are there additional questions or thoughts? The motion is to approve.
Excuse me.
Yes.
If we approve this, we are saying we are going outside of our accepted policy. Is that what we're saying here?
That's,
I don't think this is a blanket policy. We have specific ones we're talking about.
I'm not sure I understand your comment.
My comment?
Yeah.
Well, she says we're going to go outside of our stated policy and give a coding to these 2 streets that haven't been voted on by the property owners. And we're saying, at least like I was saying, it's a heavily used street. I think we have some justification here, but we're not just saying every street like that or that someplace else out on the west of town or something that isn't paved, we're going to necessarily go in and pay it without appropriation.
It is an exception to the policy.
It goes contradictory to your existing policy is what it is, under the general improvement policy.
But we're not changing the actual policy.
And we're not.
So you're going against what your policy directs you to do.
But the policy will still be intact after.
Yeah, but what good are policies? Policies are structured because they're for the good of the city. They're not for the good of just a few folks that live right here. They're the good of the city. And as we are going to plan for our city, these policies were put in place for a reason.
Just like the variance for sidewalks.
Yeah, I mean, there are all sorts
So
of...
do we need variance for streets now? Is that the route we should go?
We already have variance
policy
for
to
sidewalks.
allow for this?
That's for you to decide, not me. I mean, it sounds like a cop-out, but well, my job is to enforce and implement and enforce policy. My job is not to make policy.
Well, I'm still in favor of this.
And I've got to, as a council, we have always sought out our managers, the department head's recommendation. And this recommendation came from Sundown. I think that's why I defer this time.
Well,
go ahead.
my question is, what is the policy on repairing the street? We can't repair it at all, or we can't do any maintenance on it, or?
I mean, we do grading work on non-improved streets. This is considered a non-improved street. You know, I mean, I could, from some of the points that were made this evening, I could argue to do Union Street based upon some of the arguments presented, and I could make a more compelling argument for Union Street than I can Garfield.
It can't be done for the same cost, though. Isn't Union considerably more expensive?
Yes,
Because we're talking
but
about...
it is the only, it's only one of 2 points of connectivity from the east side of town to the west side of town and vice versa. It's even further improved, it would go from being considered a residential street to a collector street.
Was there an alternative recommendation from Tim if Garfield improvements were not included, what would be done?
Nothing.
Nothing would be done.
Because it came out of committee at 4-0.
Well, and as well as that argument goes, I'm in favor of doing union distributors.
And where you finding the money?
Well, that's another matter.
That's the problem.
But
That's
I'm
money
still
is-
in favor of doing it. I think it's
If your windows are down, you're gonna get wet. So, further discussion?
But I would say the motion in front of you at $107,050 is to do the 200 and 300 watt Garfield. East Garfield, excuse me, yes.
Final question.
Yes.
As the city administrator charged with upholding policy, do I understand you to say that you do not recommend this, that you don't recommend this?
I mean, I can argue both sides of this. It's one of those things from a use standpoint, it is above and beyond what the normal residential street is.
What do we need to do to allocate the funds to at least start working on these other things that we all can agree on? I mean, we've been through the street survey. We know all of our streets are in really, really bad condition. We're finding ways to try and do a little here and a little there. So what do we do?
So I think that's what's coming, next year's budget, what we're talking about, that whole plan, the gun studying, now the plan is, we should spend 480,000, but we're gonna be at 245.
Right.
So anyway, what are those white controls right there? One of them's for the skylight. If you close it, would it help get rid of some of that rain noise?
It's over.
It works.
All right. Lots of discussion again. We've had one last question. Is there any other last questions?
We're voting on this package.
It is on the package, that is correct. The package includes, everybody understands, it's 6-inch asphalt Union and first 4-inch asphalt Washington Street 100 block south, Main and Garfield, and then Garfield 200 and 300 east, for a total of 107, let me write it down. $107,050.
This includes all the chip seal too, right?
We've already voted on the chip seal.
Chip seal is before.
Roll call, please.
Benny,
Yes.
Blank,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Emil,
Yes.
Becky.
No.
Motion carried. Any others for you?
No.
Here we go. Public safety.
Okay. For your consideration is, lost the page, and I'll find it here correctly. Is an increase in EMS fees by ordinance. The recommendation of the full committee was to recommend adoption. A little history is that it's been 2 years since there have been any increase in the ambulance fees. Those recommendations include basic life support non-emergent fees increasing $75, basic life support emergent fees increasing $50, and the advanced life support increasing the fees $100. There's additional recommendation to increase the tree with no transport by $50 and increase our mileage cost from 13 to 15. They don't have a really important is the project increase will result in about $33,000 a year. Is that right? Projected increase of $33,000 a year revenue.
4917.
Is number 4917, the recommendation is to adopt.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded for ordinance 4917. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Mary? Yes. Abel?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Betty? Yes.
I would like to make a motion that we go into executive session for 15 minutes. The acquisition of real estate purchase of police city administrator.
15 minutes. That was a motion.
That is a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. You're all welcome to stay here or dry, or if you want to run your cars.
I will run out and cover your cars.
Just park them under Bill Taylor's, you know.
Just read the deadline. Okay, let's see, I guess, is it me that says, or do you say there was no action taken?
I'll say that.
Okay, remember what that was, I'm sorry.
We need to wait for Greg.
Oh, you don't register. They're reading a thunderstorm.
Sounds like it. All right. Reconvene, no action taken. To be taken, or taken.
I'm not aware of any other.
All right, moving on to number 9, consideration of purchase order ordinance 4916.
Motion to approve?
Been moved, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded at 4916. Roll call, please.
Eddie? Yes. Lee?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Emo?
Yes.
Becky?
Item number 10, payroll ordinance 4914, 4915. What is your desire?
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Becky? Emo?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Betty? Yes.
Item number 11, other. Any others for the group?
Anybody have any umbrellas?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, I was going to get you.